Hello, so we are back at Wickham Air Park in the Cessna 152 today, and we're going to do a bit of an academic exercise, another one of the pilot training exercises that's kind of a basic airmanship skill really, which is instrument flying, but not instrument navigation. Just to make this clear, this is going to be flying the aeroplane just by looking at the basic six-pack of instruments to safely fly the aeroplane and make it do what you want to do. So a good use case for this would be, for example, say you're flying along VFR and you fly into a cloud, or you fly into a fog bank, or or any unexpected situation where you no longer have visual reference. Even if you have not learned how to navigate with instruments yet, the primary thing you're going to need to do is to turn around and go the other way, for example, or to descend below the cloud or to climb above the cloud. You're going to need to control the aircraft without seeing where you're going. So those are the basic exercises we're going to look at today. So we'll go and get the Cessna up and running. So it shouldn't take too long. So we turn the battery master switch on, we go and turn on the beacon light, we turn on the the fuel cutoff. I always call it mixture for some reason. And then we go for rich mixture. We crack open the throttle, and we can turn the alternator on before the engine's running, to be honest. We pump the primer a couple of times if it hasn't been primed yet today, and we get the engine up and running. And we run the engine up to 1000 RPM. So we're just watching the RPM over there, pulling it back a little bit. We just hold it at 1000 RPM while it's warming up. And we can see the gauges moving down here. Oil pressure is gently creeping up, but it hasn't gone very far. Obviously, if we open the throttle, you'll see it slide to the right. Okay, so engine is up and running. Well, let's go and turn some lights on before we go flying then. So we'll turn the nav lights on straight away. We'll turn the taxi light on, and we'll go and taxi out to the runway. Okay, so I've deliberately set I thought I'd deliberately set the weather to few clouds. Let's just go and have a quick look. Yeah, we got it set to few clouds, so the weather's not going to tumble us all over the place, so we can happily talk about things without having to have any other concerns about what's going on. So, in the real world, to do these kind of training exercises, the pilots often wear a hood. So it's like a strange looking plastic baseball cap, like the blast shield that Luke Skywalker wore in Star Wars. You can buy kind of an elastic and plastic version of something like that you can wear over your face to prevent you from seeing outside, so you can only see down, around your knees in the aeroplane. Okay, well, obviously we're going to do it with this neat trick that we can do in the simulator of aiming the screen and lining the instruments up, but we're not going to do it until we're in the air. So we're going to take off from Wickham as we normally would. So we don't need flaps. We're going to go full throttle. The runway's long enough that we don't need flaps. We're looking for about 50 knots for the rotate. So we're just holding the centre line. There's 40 knots, 50 knots, gently rotate, and we're up. If you remember for the pattern from previous sessions we've done at Wickham, you maintain runway direction, which is about 245 degrees, till you get to the boundary, and then you go for 230 degrees. And we're looking in a 152 to maintain about 700 feet a minute climb rate at full throttle. You can see it's just holding the speed at an attitude that hits 700 feet a minute. Yeah, it's actually gently increasing airspeed actually, but so there you go. I think the pilot operating handbook says about 700 feet a minute will give you your best climb rate. Not the steepest, the best. Okay, so we'll continue on 230 degrees for a while, and we look out the side until we get the Hambledon Valley past us, which is this valley you can just see coming along here, and then we'll head off northeast, and then we'll start playing with our instruments to do some tests. So we're just coming up to, we've just gone through 1500 feet, coming up to 2000 feet. We'll level out at 2000. We'll use that as a reference altitude while we're playing. Okay, so let's get rid of the stick out of the way, sorry, the yoke. Let's start a coordinated turn. So we're looking to zero the vertical speed. It's strange, isn't it? Because in a pattern, you are referring to the instruments anyway as a backup for what you're seeing outside. But we are going to shut off what we can see outside. Okay, so we're just coming round to 310, 315 will be north west. So let's get the plane trimmed out a little bit, and we can pull the throttle back now to 75% for manoeuvring. Okay, so we are going to zoom in, and we're not going to look outside for the next few minutes. So what are we seeing? We've got indicated airspeed, top left, telling us how fast we are going. We've got attitude indicator, and you can see the plane is moving around. The air outside is not tremendously stable, and the propeller is trying to rotate the aeroplane, which isn't helping us. So remember, a clockwise turning propeller will try and rotate the aeroplane counterclockwise. That's just Newton's laws in play. We've got altitude, which you can see is varying at the moment because I'm not doing a very good job of keeping the aeroplane level. We've got the turn coordinator, which basically tells you if the tail is following the nose. So if we introduce some rudder, you'll see it kick to one side or the other. Okay, we've got vertical speed here in hundreds of feet per minute. And you've obviously got the compass. So we're going to turn north now. So I'm going to bank the aeroplane. We're going to pull a tiny amount of backstick to counter the loss of lift from the aeroplane being off to one side. We're using the turn coordinator if we want to do a standard rate turn. And then we level out as we reach north. So these are all really basic exercises that you can practice without looking outside, just to navigate around, to do rate 1 turns, and to, if we wanted to climb for example, we would establish climb rate on the vertical speed indicator, go full throttle, which will control our speed as well. So we go for the climb rate we want, and we can use attitude to maintain speed, so you can see we're accelerating, so therefore we can pull up a bit harder. It is quite turbulent out there, I'm quite surprised. We'll continue on with the climb until we get to 2,500 feet. So we reach 2,500 feet, we come back to cruise throttle, we let go of the pressure on the back stick. You don't trim when you're doing manoeuvring either. You maintain pressure, because then you have the judgment on the amount of pressure you're holding. It's worth me pointing out, I should have said at the start, this is not me instructing, this is me explaining what I have learned so far. Yeah? So you control your speed with your attitude. It all sounds a little bit backwards. You don't use the throttle to manage your speed. So I can explain that. If we go downhill, we will accelerate. So we're going to cut the throttle back to 50% to descend. So we're still getting faster and faster, look, even at 50% throttle. So what we're going to do is actually raise the nose slightly. So obviously we won't descend as quickly as we might like. It'll be about 300 feet a minute normally. But you won't overspeed. Yeah? And as we were doing that, look, we've started to turn. So we're turning back towards north. So we can come back down. To 2,000 feet. So we're just practicing keeping the pressure on the nose, balancing it out, watching the airspeed, using nose up and nose down to maintain the airspeed. So you will see the vertical speed move around as I manage the airspeed. It's great to do this in the 152 purely because it hasn't got any automatic systems to help you. It's you doing it. Okay, so we level back out and we go back to cruise throttle. And then we're level again. I'm just going to trim gently on the elevator trim to stop the needle. So the easiest way to do this is to put some pressure on to bring the needle where you want it, and then give it some trim in the direction you're wanting the needle to, or against the direction the needle's trying to drift away from you, until it stops moving. It's not an exact science. Okay, so let's do a standard rate turn and go south. So we're going to turn until the indicator's there. We're going to hold the vertical speed. We're going quite fast, so it's being pushed around a little bit. As we turn, we could do with losing that 90 feet. So we'll just let this creep below by releasing some back pressure. Remember, we did not trim it for the turn, therefore the nose is going to try and gently fall. The interesting thing is, as we are falling, we are building up airspeed, which is generating lift and pulling us back towards level flight. So we're just coming back round towards south, and we're coming back towards 2,000 feet. Whoa, we overcorrected. You only need tiny adjustments to do this. So it's a scan as well that you're doing between all the instruments to see if it's all... See, look, I'm doing really badly at it while I'm talking. This is one of the penalties. Talking and doing and scanning overloads me sometimes. So trying to get the altitude, the vertical speed, the direction and the attitude all at the same time, and to talk about it in a halfway sensible manner is quite a trick to achieve. So you can see you can fly around all day doing this, and it's just a really good exercise for the multitasking aspect of it, which you're seeing I'm doing quite poorly at today. It's quite late in the evening, and it just shows that, you know, when you're tired, it does affect how good you are at these things. But yeah, it's a really great exercise to achieve, and obviously we can look outside and we can see we're flying back across the hills, and Wickham will be out there somewhere. We can actually cheat and have a little look on little nav map and see where we've got to, and we're just returning back towards Wickham Air Park right now. So if we turn on the trail, we should have had the trail on, there we go. So you can see the general direction we've been flying all the time. So to come into the circuit at Wickham, we want to come in at 2,000 feet basically. So if you imagine the circuit, I believe, comes up here and then, sorry, round here, the corner of Turville over to West Wickham. So this line along here, we want to join it. So we'll come in at a 45-degree angle onto the downwind leg, and we'll drop to 1500 feet to do that. So we're going to nose down. We've pulled the throttle back to 50%, which means we can maintain, without accelerating too much, probably about 500 feet a minute. We're just keeping an eye on the airspeed and using attitude to control the speed. So we're going to begin that turn towards about 90 degrees. Actually, it won't, it'll be more than that, won't it? Yeah, it's going to be more like 135. We'll see. So we're at 1500 feet now, which is pattern height. Or sorry, circuit height. There isn't a pattern at Wickham. There is a circuit with a very specific parameters. So let's have a look at that. Come back up to 75% throttle. So there we go. So we'll be turning soon. We can use our visual references soon, so we're looking for, there's the road that goes past Wickham, there's the field, so we can turn now towards our usual references. So we should hit 60 degrees, aiming for this field, with the house on the hill, and there we go. So we're pretty much on the pattern, oh sorry, the circuit. I'm doing it again, aren't I? So again, we are using the instruments, obviously in this case, to verify our orientation in the sky, and using the ground to back up our observations of the instruments. Well, obviously if you lose sight of the ground for whatever reason, you need to be able to use the instruments and to pragmatically do things like a U-turn, a climb, a descent, you know, and to control the aircraft without looking outside. And it's a really good thing to just practice now and again. So there we go, we can see the walled garden down there, so we'll begin our right turn. So standard right turn. Come back off the throttle now. Coming a bit steep, that's fine. We're looking to drop to 1,000 feet now on the way over towards the industrial estate, so there's 150 degrees. We're looking out gently now. We should see the airfield coming. We're coming down towards 1,000 feet. We're slowing down. $1,700 feet, oh sorry, 1,200 feet, coming down to 1,000, which is 500 above field elevation. You can see the VASI lights over there of the airfield if we sit down. So we'll start our turn. We're now at 500 feet. We are slow enough now to extend flaps, and we've overshot slightly. It just shows, doesn't it? Don't practice for a few days and you lose the knack of it. And again, not having head tracking still is really hampering me sometimes. A bit high, just looking at the VASI lights there, so we're just descending a bit more quickly than we normally would, and there we go, back on track. Throttle to idle, flare, and we're down. And roll long. So we can raise the flaps while we're rolling. Okay, now we're back on the ground. We can turn the... we never turned the strobe on, did we? Oh my word, that was a bit naughty. This is what happens when you don't use a checklist as well. So there's all sorts of things. But the main point of today wasn't about correct procedures. It was about that practice of flying with purely the instruments and becoming proficient at controlling the aeroplane without being able to see anything and not relying on an autopilot to do it for you. So understanding the difference in forces as you enter a turn, for example. As you climb, you're obviously going to lose airspeed, so you increase throttle, and then you use attitude to balance, you know, the rate of change of your speed. So it's an interesting trap to fall into. If people have played around with the big jets in the simulator, they'll have played with vertical speed mode, for example, where you can choose your climb or descent rate. In a propeller plane, it's more a case of you manage your airspeed and throttle, and the descent or climb rate is a product of the attitude. So you manage speed with the attitude, and the rate you climb or descend is a byproduct of all of that. So you're not really choosing that. There's a lot of vans on the apron today, aren't there? They must be in for bacon butties or something. Okay, parking brake on. And engine stopped. And magneto's off. Alternator's off. Nav light's off. Beacon light off. Taxi light off, and we're good. So we can go and turn... Hang on a second, why are the avionics still on? Interesting. Oh, it's just on the battery, isn't it, in the 152? See, I've flown so many different airplanes recently, I've completely forgotten all about that kind of thing. So anyway, this wasn't, as I said, this wasn't about procedures today. This was about getting a feel for flying an airplane without looking and not using any assistance, and seeing the difference in the momentums and the accelerations in different directions in response to what you're doing, and interpreting what's happening on the instruments as you do it. Anyway, it's a really, really good exercise to do from time to time, just to fly around and purely zoom the view in on the instruments. I'm going to leave it there, and I'll see you again soon.